Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the JB Show. Today I'm going to be talking about the Ottawa Senators. Now, why would I be talking about the Ottawa Senators? And they made a trade yesterday, and they swapped players, essentially. They traded Zach Smith to the Chicago Blackhawks for Artem Anisimov. Now, it's quite a minor trade, to be honest. And I wanted to go over the trade, and then I wanted to do a little bit kind of a deep dive on the Ottawa Senators. Like, what is their plan? What's going on in Ottawa? Because, oh boy, their season did not go so well for them. So, Zach Smith, he's going into his third year of a 4-year contract at 3.25 AAV with a modified no trade clause. And has no. This is important. Has no signing bonuses. It's just straight salary for the next 2 years. He played 70 games and got 28 points. So this is a guy who maybe fills all your roster, and he was actually waived at the beginning of the season, and this was huge for the league because this is a guy who makes a nice contract. And he cleared waivers and then was brought back up. And it seemed, some would argue that it was like some kind of message, like everyone's on watch. Now, I'm looking at his stats. It's not like he's put up big numbers. Like 28 last year, 19 the year before, 32 the year before that, 36, 22. In his 10 seasons, it's not like he's put up how many points? The most in the NHL is 36 in 2015-16. So it's not like he's a big impact player. He's 6'2" and is 208. So maybe you could 208 pounds. So maybe you could say he's a bigger guy, but not really. So I don't know what you'd consider his role other than he's a bottom six player. At this point in his career, he's probably a fourth liner on a good team. On the Senators, he's probably sitting on your second line. Now, Artem Anisimov, who signed a 5-year contract in 2015, is in the fourth year. And his contract's a little bit different. He has some signing bonuses. So on July 1st this year, Chicago handed him $2 million, and he has a base salary of $2 million. So Ottawa will pay him $2 million throughout the rest of the season. And next year, he has a signing bonus of $1.5 million. So Ottawa will have to pay him that $1.5 million on July 1st, and then we'll pay him another $1.5 million throughout the season. So in total, compared to Zach Smith's contract, which they're basically paying for they would have been paying for the next 2 years, $6.5 million. They only have to pay $5.5 million. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, especially for an NHL team. But when it comes to finances with the Ottawa Senators, they're not a team with big money. They're looking to move players. They're looking to bring in players who have deals that you're not paying what it actually looks like you're paying. So the Ottawa Senators, they're paying 4.5 compared to his contract. He has a cap hit of 4.55. Over the next 2 seasons, they're only paying Artem Anisimov $5.5 million. And I think for Ottawa, that's a good deal. Now, this was essentially just a switch of players. Even Anisimov, he's a bottom six player at this point, probably your third line. Even on the Ottawa Senators, he daily faceoff has him on the third line with Duclair and Varono. So the trade is minor, but I think it's part of a bigger plan. Like it's a way for the Senators. They were able to save some money. Now, what else did Ottawa do? They traded the signing rights of Cody Ceci and Ben Harper. They sent them to Toronto and brought in Connor Brown and Nikita Zaitsev. I've given you my thoughts on Nikita Zaitsev. I think he may work out in Ottawa. Right now, Daily Faceoff has him on their third pairing, which who knows? That could work for Nikita Zaitsev. Connor Brown, on the other hand, I think this is his chance to thrive. And we all saw our Leaf fans saw Connor Brown in the 15-16 season and years previous. We all thought this is going to be a good player, and he was. Looking at how he plays, Connor Brown is a good player. But when you play him on the fourth line, maybe he's not as he won't play as well because the players he's playing with aren't as well, and his minutes are reduced. And I'm not saying, Mike Babcock should have played him up in the lineup. I'm not saying that at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. They had an excess of forwards, and they were mainly better than Connor Brown. So I'm not dissing Mike Babcock. I'm not saying anything wrong. He had 29 points this year. He had 28 the year before, and 36. But since the 16-17 season, he's been okay. Even in 2017-18, he was playing third line minutes, and then he played fourth line minutes last year. So it was inevitable that he was going to be traded. We all saw it coming. It was almost happened in February. He was going to be traded to Edmonton, but that didn't go through. So that's that. Now, what else happened? They brought in Tyler Ennis and Ron Hainsey. It seems like this team just signed half of Toronto. It really does. And it's funny that they brought in Nikita Zaitsev and Ron Hainsey from the Leafs when Eugene Melnyk made a comment about the Leafs defense, saying, they forgot about defense, and then brought in half of the penalty kill. So, what is Ron Hainsey? Now he's 38. He signed a 35+ contract, has a modified no trade clause, making $3.5 just for this year. What is he to the Ottawa Senators? Probably a third pairing guy. It depends on if Eric Brandstrom comes up to the NHL. But what he really is he's that lead. I don't know if maybe you'd consider him a leader because you have Mark Borowiecki, but he's that older presence in the locker room. And I get it. It's only a year, but next year your team is basically going to be filled with younger players. At least Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, Drake Batherson, Max Verneau, even Anthony Duclair's a younger player, plus Thomas Chabot, and maybe Eric Brandstrom if he comes up, plus anyone else who comes up. Maybe Josh Norris might come up. I don't know. Logan Brown. Logan Brown could potentially come up to the NHL next year. And he's a guy you'd want surrounded by older players with experience who can not with just experience, with players who can fill a locker room and be good influences, because you don't want them sitting there hearing a bunch of BS from a bunch of older players and thinking that's the way it's going to go, because that just won't go well. So what's next for the Ottawa Senators? Now, there's quite a few teams who I think you can consider in some cap trouble who still need to sign some players, and teams are going to be giving Ottawa a call. They still have $20 million in cap space. $20 million in cap space. What's the I get it. Ottawa's not a cap team, right? They're not going to even probably get close to the 81.5 cap. But teams with older players whose contracts are basically front loaded, can say, hey, Ottawa, we'll give you a piece, a nice prospect or a pick, and X player, whichever player it might be, for some player. That's just what happens. You see it happen with Arizona. And funny, Arizona is right up against the cap this year. So, and I think they're a better team. They've definitely improved. So, Ottawa needs to follow the footsteps, maybe not of Arizona, but they need to go in a certain path. They need to bring in prospects, they need to bring in picks, because that's how you're going to build a team. I'm sorry, Ottawa, but I don't think it's a destination that many players want to go to. Yes, okay, Erik Karlsson was, yes, I would want to come back to Canada. Sure, that was his wife. That was his wife talking. That's who wanted to come back. And you know what? He ended up back in San Jose. So maybe he didn't go as well. One contract that I think might be on the move from the Ottawa Senators is Bobby Ryan. Now, he has 3 years left at $7.25 million, and it was rumored that his contract was basically tied on to the Erik Karlsson trade, and in the end, it didn't end up happening. But it would have been nice to include, and looking at the return they got, you thought, it's something they'd include because the value wasn't there. So let's look at the lines. I'm using Daily Faceoff. What does the first line look like? Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, Drake Batherson. All young players. Do I think they're going to get the most minutes? Probably. Maybe Brady Tkachuk will. I don't know if Colin White's ready for first-line minutes. I definitely don't think Drake Batherson's ready for first-line minutes. Your second line looking like Connor Brown on the left, Chris Tierney down the middle, and Bobby Ryan. And if Bobby Ryan stays healthy, you know what? You're probably throwing him up on the first line. Just because, I don't know what Drake Batherson is as a first-line player. It's not gonna look fun when every time that first line goes on, you're just getting scored on. Third line: Anthony Duclair, Artem Anisimov, and Max Verneau. It could be an interesting line. I mean, this team's gonna finish in the bottom again. I'm sorry, it's just what's gonna happen. This not finishing anywhere close to the top. Fourth line is Tyler Ennis, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, and Mikhail Butker. I like the Tyler Ennis signing, and I liked it. I liked it when he came to Toronto because he's a older player, kind of a little bit past his prime, injury ridden, but it's Tyler Ennis, man. Like I really enjoyed how he played for the Leafs last year. I had no complaints. For a fourth-line player, that's what you're signing him as. He had 51 games played. He had 12 goals and 18 points. And for a fourth-line player, man, I'm not complaining. I really am not complaining. Now, what's their D? Thomas Chabot and Dylan DeMello as your first pairing. I mean, it's not the best pairing. It really isn't. But Thomas Chabot is most definitely a promising prospect, and you're throwing him up on the first pairing. Second pairing is Daily Faceoff has Eric Brandstrom and Ron Hainsey. I don't know if Eric Brandstrom is going to come up at the beginning. He could come up halfway through. I worry about bringing him up. He played 2 games last year. Played 41 because he played most of the season with the Vegas AHL team, Chicago. Ended up with 28 points. I heard he was the best NHL prospect not in the NHL. before he was traded to Ottawa. So I thought that's great. I would not be surprised if he makes it. But I'm not sure if he's NHL ready. Actually, that's a lie. I think he's NHL ready. I don't know if Ottawa is the situation you throw a player like that in, because the Leafs did a similar thing with Marner, right? I think when Marner was drafted, I thought he was an NHL ready player. But there's a couple reasons why I think he wasn't put on the team right away. Number one, you put Marner on a team with the roster that the Leafs had in 15-16. Oh my God, he's not going to do well. It was a shit show. It was an absolute shit show. Number two, the Leafs also wanted to, I don't think you put a player like that on. He's scoring goals, getting assists. You want to tank a little bit, right? Like it was, no one will admit this because it'd be a nightmare for them, but I think they were tanking for Austin Matthews. And by sending Mitch Marner down to they sent him to junior for the year. I think he improved as a player. I mean, he basically dominated the league. He was already dominating the league anyways. But I think you send Eric Brandstrom down to the AHL one more year. Let him improve. Let him dominate down there. And then you see what he has next year. Because now, how many picks do you have for next year? The Ottawa Senators, in the first round, have 2 first-round picks. Their own, finally, and the San Jose Sharks. Now, I know you can't predict what the San Jose Sharks are going to be. They're obviously a playoff team. How far they go, I don't know. But your own first-round pick, that will be probably a top 5 draft pick. If it goes the way it did this year, and I'm really looking at this team. Sure, they brought in a couple players, but it's not like their team got massively better. You're not close to making the playoffs. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. You have great prospects coming up: Josh Norris, Logan Brown, Jonathan Davidson, Rudolph Balcers, Alex Formenton, Drake Batherson, Vitaly Abramov, Philip Chlapik, Lassie Thompson. It's not that they don't have players. Even Philip Gustafson or Joey Decord. These are players that will be NHL players. They need to develop. Let them develop properly. Even if it means that they're dominating the league, let them develop down there, because when they come up here, they're going to be playing with good players. I'm not worried. I started this podcast talking about a very minor trade. But in the grand span of things, it's a trade that shows where the Ottawa Senators are at. You're bringing in. Listen, I think Artem Anisimov is a better player than Zach Smith, and it was a 1-for-1 deal, purely probably just because of some type of cash. I don't know what Chicago was doing. Maybe for the cap. Chicago was doing it for the cap hit. They saved over $1 million in cap. The Ottawa Senators were doing it to acquire for cash reasons. And what do we know about the NHL? How valuable cap space is. Extremely important. That's why it seemed like, what was Chicago doing there? So, to wrap it up, the trade, understandable. This is where the Ottawa Senators are at. They're making trades, smaller trades, for not assets, but for cash reasons. And then you'll see they're going to be bringing in players who are either on the injured reserve or making big money that with front-loaded contracts, and you'll see they're going to be bringing in prospects, bringing in the prospects and the picks. And who has the most important job in the Senators front office? That scouting staff. The next 2 years, they have 6 second-round picks alone. Next year they have 2 first-round picks, 3 sixth-round picks in 2020, and then they have all the rest of their picks, but they don't have this year 2020's 5th-round pick. So the scouting staff have an extremely important job. This is how they're going to build their team. And I said this before, Ottawa, I don't know how much of a destination Ottawa is for NHL players. You're going to build this team through the draft, and I think they've already started that. I listed the players they brought in, and then they also traded Mark Stone and brought in a potential elite defenseman in Eric Brandstrom. At least top 4. He's an at least top 4 defenseman. So they're ready for that push. They need to get a pick. They need to get a top 5 pick. Now, yes, they had Brady Tkachuk 2 years ago now. They need that one. They need one more top 5 pick, and I think this year is the year. And I'm not saying, next year with that pick, they're just going to be a playoff team. It builds, right? This is how you have to build. Most teams do this, right? Most teams somehow end up building to that point. You're going to see Vancouver do the same thing. Vancouver, I don't think are going to be a bottom 5 team bottom 5, bottom 7 team next year. I think they're going to be pushing their way to contending for a playoff spot. But think about it, they've been basically down there for the last little while. So this is normal. I mean, listen, things could be much worse. You could just be shit for the next 10 years if you want to be like the Leafs, where it's just been, we made the playoffs once and nothing was properly done, right? A rebuild needs to be properly done. And I know ownership in Ottawa is nuts. I know you hear millions of things come out of Eugene Melnyk, millions of things coming out of the ownership with the arena deal, with whatever's going on. But I think Eugene Melnyk is committed to doing a rebuild properly, because he knows that if it's not, and we're just back at square one in the next 2-3 years, it's not going to be fun for him. It's not going to be fun for him. Why? Because their arena, I'm sorry, is in the middle of it's not close to the downtown core. And I thought this arena deal that was kind of planned out, this is going to be so much better for the team, because I think Ottawa could be a hockey city. I know. And I know what people are going to say. And now I'm just rambling on. But I know what people are going to say is that, look at the playoffs. They couldn't even get a sold-out crowd in when they made it to the conference finals against Pittsburgh. So, but this team needs to rebuild properly. This is how I'm going to end my podcast. I'm going to say this team needs to rebuild properly, and they're on track to rebuild properly. As long as they don't, listen, teams make stupid moves, but they can't make a major stupid move in trading a bunch of picks and prospects to bring in better players, because that's not going to work. I'm sorry, that's not going to work. Unless it's you're bringing in picks and you're trading picks and prospects for a young, solidified player. I'm talking early 20s. I don't think it's worth it. I think it's you'll let them build up. And then eventually you're going to have a team where you're going to be at a point where you say, you know what? You want to trade a first-round pick and a prospect for at a trade deadline? Go right ahead, because you have assets to either bring up, or you have assets to keep in that team where it'll just flow out. It'll just flow out. Now, please let me know. I mean, I'd ask you, let me know what you think about the trade. You can go right ahead. I thought the trade was pretty small. Let me know what you think of the Ottawa Senators. Are they on the road to a proper rebuild? What else should they be doing? What else do they need to do? What are they missing? Is there a piece? Is there one core player, one core position that they're missing out on that they should maybe target in the draft, target in trade? Let me know in the comments.